Some people think all Hallows Eve is just for fun and games. Well, allow me to explain. One night a year, the spirits come alive to tickle your fear. Let me be clear. Spider webs, severed heads, it's the dawning of the dead. Ghosts are spawning, demons calling you from underneath your bed. Halloween will make you run, make you scream, deep into the darkness of the night. Halloween will make you live out your worst dreams, deep into the darkness of the night. Here come the vampires, fiending for your blood. There's no escape, they're here to stay, so let them have their fun. Well, your world is falling down. Wicked witches, evil clowns, killer zombies take the town tonight. Spider webs, severed heads, it's the dawning of the dead. Ghosts are spawning, demons calling you from underneath your bed. Halloween will make you run, make you scream, deep into the darkness of the night. Yeah, Halloween will make you live out your worst dreams, deep into the darkness of the night. Oh, Halloween, it's Halloween. People panicked, what a sight, terrorized and horrified. Halloween, it's Halloween. I'm only joking, don't be scared. Leave your houses if you dare on Halloween.
I'm living like Catch Me If You Can, you know. I ain't talking serious. It's the amazing true story of the youngest and most daring cousin. I'm tricky, swiftly, but yet vicious. There's always a mystery. Every day, a new identity. Gemini, woke up on the wrong side of the sheet. I realized I should've been born on Halloween. I ain't no demon seeing, but I do evil deeds. My daddy don't never see me, I ain't no devil seed. I don't remember the last time checking up on me. Why you dropped another album in a week? I'm a wolf, but I be dressing like a sheep. Put on my monkey suit and go orangutan. Poppin' monkey, poppin' balls, make me swing. Who the fuck you are, be in and out my brain. I know I'm smart, you make me do some crazy things. Monkey on my back, let a nigga be. Please, niggas free out here, but they ain't free. You out here physically, locked up mentally. Everywhere I go, I gotta bring a ski. No face, no case, live every day like Halloween. Gemini, woke up on the wrong side of the sheet. I realized I should've been born on Halloween. I ain't no demon seeing, but I do evil deeds. My daddy don't never see me, I ain't no devil seed. I don't remember the last time checking up on me. Why you dropped another album in a week? I'm a wolf, but I be dressing like a sheep. Put on my monkey suit and go orangutan. I treat so much of individuals for a treat. Cake boogie with the hoodie, best believe. It's hot, he got the hoodie on the hot heat. And he got so much tricks up his sleeve. All the nights I had to mask up on the scheme. Babe, my subconscious got me fighting in my sleep. I can't forget about it, I see it in my dream. I'm kicking in Yoda, but I don't want no sweet. Give me what I came for so I can leave. You know I'm serious, don't you feel my energy? No, it's not a joke, everybody on their knees. Don't try to butt jack, you get a bucky back. Gemini, woke up on the wrong side of the sheet. I realized I should've been born on Halloween. I ain't no demon seeing, but I do evil deeds. My daddy don't never see me, I ain't no devil seed. I don't remember the last time checking up on me. Why you dropped another album in a week? I'm a wolf, but I be dressing like a sheep. Put on my monkey suit and go orangutan. You ain't gotta be scared, man, just respect a nigga, please. I'm starting to think my cranium got a disease. They be like, yo, Kodak, I just see you on the scene. They be like, I ain't approach you though, cause you was looking mean. Don't need no friends, I got a big family. I'm a G, it's in my jeans. Glock 23 is in my jeans. Ain't playing freeze tag, but I got that beam. Sorry baby, I lied, you was just a fling. I don't love you, I just wanna get in your jeans. Tricked her for her tree, tricked her out her panties, yeah. I can't get romantic, no, I'm not satanic. I'm not satanic. Who said that? Why you said that? Who said that?
Good. It's not locked. Glad I brought this flashlight. Hope it doesn't conk out on me. Oh, wow. What a beautiful place. It is kind of eerie, though. This must be the living room. Wait a minute, no. It's the front parlor. That's what they called it. Look at those drapes. Oh!
Music or some special musical instrument that someone loved, especially during life, the ghost will come to see you. Some people say that you can raise a ghost by whistling. You might, and you might not. It has happened. Once a man was walking along a road at night whistling some tune, and a ghost fell into step beside him, whistling the same tune. You can call back some loved ghost by too much grief and weeping.
Glad I brought this flashlight. Hope it doesn't conk out on me. Oh, wow. What a beautiful place. It is kind of eerie, though. This must be the living room. Wait a minute, no. It's the front parlor. That's what they called it. Look at those drapes. Oh! Oh, great. All that dust. I'll never get it out of my nose.
Most of the trees were bare this night. Witches and goblins were quite a sight. All this happened on one scary night. The night of Halloween.
Or something to eat, let us repeat. Trick or treat. We've walked and walked the livelong day. We've knocked on many doors. Behind each door another face, and now we've come to yours. Trick or treat, trick or treat. We're children who live just down the street.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We take you now to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown New York, where you will be entertained by the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel in New York City, we bring you the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. With a touch of the Spanish, Raymond Raquello leads off with La Comparsita. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to the music of Raymond Raquello playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel situated in downtown New York. tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust. Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with the noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, New Jersey. We return you until then to the music of Raymond Raquello and his orchestra. We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, where Carl Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong slit in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. I'll ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides the ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
Any time, Mr. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be at the point nearest the Earth in opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Phillips.
See.
Although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions peculiar to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced, as a scientist, that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars?
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from the Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just handed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory in Princeton, New Jersey, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mr. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the Natural History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mr. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carl Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home, comes a special bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we'll have our commentator, Carl Phillips, give you a word picture of the scene as soon as he can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millett and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carl Phillips again, out at the Wilmot Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin. Paint for you a word picture of a strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Night. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have struck on its way down. But I can see the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor. At least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. Has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say, what's the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. The curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing one side, please, while the police pushing the crowd back? Here's Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmot, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? A step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmot.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon?
Louder, please, closer.
Yes. I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mr. Wilmot, and then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfway.
Yes, Mr. Wilmot, and then you saw something.
Well, not first off. I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
I turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was asleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen a kind of greenish streak and then zingo. Something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmot?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you want me to
No,
talk
that's
some
quite
more?
all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmot, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in the field in back of us, and the police are trying to rope off the roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. The car's headlights throw an enormous spotlight on the pit where the object's half buried. Now, some of the more daring souls now are venturing near the edge. Their cigarettes stand out against the metal sheet. One man wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. Now, the policeman wins. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen, please. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Here. Now, we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Professor Pearson.
Yes, Mr. Russell.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial. Not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is... You can see it's cylindrical
Just a minute.
shape.
Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw, and the thing must be hollow. Move it! Keep back there! Keep those men back! Keep back there! Keep those idiots back! Get off! The top blew! Look out there! Stand back! Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something I can see coming out of that black hole through luminous discs. The eyes, it might be a face, might be almost a heavens. Something wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one and another one and another one. They look like tentacles to me. Oh, yeah, I can see the thing's body. Now it's large as a bear. It glistens like wet leather, but that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. The eyes are black and they gleam like a serpent. The mouth is a kind of V-shape with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. And the monster or whatever it is can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's rising up now and the crowd falls back. There seems plenty. Of course, it's not very experienced, ladies and gentlemen. I can't find words. Well, I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmus Farm, Groversville, New Jersey. We now return you to Carl Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and gentlemen, my aunt. Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of the stone wall that joins Mr. Wilmer's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit. About 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain's conferring with someone. Can't quite see who. Oh, yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side, studying the object while the captain and two policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. Flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait a minute, something's happening. A humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springs in the mirror and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Lord, they're turning into flames. Now the whole field's caught up by the woods, the barns, the gas tanks of the automobiles spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. We continue now with our piano interlude.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Pearson, brought to you by direct wire. Professor Pearson.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carl Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. The Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia, stationed outside of Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here's a bulletin from State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit, and there is no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the state militia of Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facility. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the state militia near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object lies in a pit directly below our position, surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry, without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. Things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the light. Looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Millstone River, probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute, I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmot Farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. A tub, rather. Well, wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal, kind of a steel-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. Going higher and higher. What? It's standing on legs, actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle which took place tonight at Grover Mills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Grover's Mill to Plainsboro, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state through its center. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from New York to Philadelphia discontinued, except routing some of the trains through Allerton and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Philadelphia, Camden, and Trenton. It is estimated to twice their normal population. Martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. At this time, we take you to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country. I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country.
nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
Wobble the Witch Cat by Mary Calhoun. Once upon a Halloween, there was a good witch named Maggie who owned a very grumpy witch cat named Wobble. They lived together in a teetery little house on the edge of town. Maggie was a fat, chuckling old lady with short gray hair. Wobble was as cross as he was black. He hadn't always been cross. Once he had been just as good as Maggie. It was all the fault of a new broomstick that Maggie had gotten for the last Halloween. It had a thin, slippery handle, and it was so hard to ride on that Wobble was afraid he would fall off. He had even tried wrapping his tail around the stick, but he just couldn't balance on the thin seat. Just as the broomstick rose from the ground, he did fall off. He climbed on again quickly, but it gave him a bad scare. What's worse, all the other witch cats had laughed at Wobble as he wobbled across the sky. Now it was almost Halloween again, and Wobble grew very cross as he worried about riding the broomstick. He grumped, and he yowled, and he ran under Maggie's feet, just on purpose. Only yesterday he had almost upset the old lady as she carried her pans of witch's brew to the oven. She was making magic wish cookies to set out for the children when they came trick-or-treating. Wobble refused to go out and howl on fences as a proper witch cat should. Instead, he crouched in a corner, twitching his whiskers and grumbling to himself about the broomstick. The day before Halloween, he even knocked the jack-o'-lantern out of the window. That evening, Maggie said gaily, "Tomorrow night we ride again." And Wobble, that unhappy cat, actually humped his back and spat at her. Spat at his old friend, Maggie. Late that night, while Maggie slept, Wobble went tip, tip, tip on his soft black feet to the broom closet. There hung the witch's broomstick, shining faintly with magic, all ready for Halloween. Wobble grabbed the stick with his teeth and pulled it down. Out the back door he pulled it, out through the backyard, out to the trash barrel. He pushed the broom into the barrel, and then he scampered back to the house for a good night's sleep. Early the next morning, the rubbish truck came along and took the witch's broomstick away. All that day, Wobble was in a much better temper. When the sky began to darken and Maggie got out her black cape and pointed black hat, Wobble just licked his fur and purred. "Time to dust off my broomstick and get ready to go," Maggie told him. "We must sweep the stars clean in our part of the sky so the children here will be able to see when they go trick-or-treating." Wobble just grinned, the black witch cat grin. Maggie went to the broom closet and opened the door. The broomstick was gone. There was only a great empty place where the broom usually hung. Oh, fiddle. Now, where did I put that broom? Maggie worried. I keep it hanging in this closet all year. She looked on the back porch. No broomstick. The witch cat chased his tail. Maggie scurried all over the house, peering into every nook and cranny, but no broomstick anywhere. Wobble danced on his hind legs, pretending he was chasing a fly. "Oh, dear, where is my magic broomstick?" the old witch cried. "We can't fly up into the sky without it, and there's no time to go to the witch of the mountain for a new one." Wobble sat down and tried to look sad, but his yellow eyes gleamed. "It's almost dark now," Maggie muttered, pulling at her hair. "Whatever shall we do? I wonder if I have an extra broom in the closet." She opened the closet door again. No, there was nothing in the closet but her vacuum cleaner. Maggie started to turn away. Then she looked back at the vacuum cleaner. What was that strange glow about it? "Galloping ghosts!" she shouted. "It looks magic!" All year the broom had been hanging over the vacuum cleaner in the closet. "Maybe the magic of the broom dripped off onto the vacuum cleaner," Maggie cried. "Maybe the cleaner will fly." Wobble stopped waving his long tail and began to look worried. "We'll just have to try it," the old witch said. "All the other witches will be out sweeping their parts of the sky. What a disgrace if our piece of sky is dirty on Halloween night. Come on, Wobble." She smacked on her pointed black hat and pulled the vacuum cleaner out into the backyard. But Wobble ran under the stove. He crouched there, yowling with fear. Maggie got down on her knees and tried to pull him out. "Nice, Wobble. Don't be afraid," she tried to soothe him. The cat just braced his feet and growled. At last, Maggie had to drag him out. She tucked him tightly under her arm and went back to the vacuum cleaner. The machine glowed strangely in the moonlight. "Now, I'll ride on the handle, and you can ride on the bag and back," she told Wobble. "And don't you dare jump off." Wobble sat down stiffly and dug his claws into the cloth of the bag. He hoped the vacuum cleaner wouldn't fly. "Abracadabra, sis boom ba," Maggie shouted. The vacuum cleaner trembled, gave a jerk, and up into the air it rose. High into the Halloween sky sailed Maggie and Wobble on the magic vacuum cleaner. Suddenly, Wobble realized something wonderful. The vacuum cleaner's bag made a nice wide seat. He wasn't wobbling. "Meow!" he cried happily. Then he curled up on the bag and began to lick his fur. Wobble was going to enjoy this Halloween ride. As Maggie and Wobble flew near a flock of witches, all the cats screeched with laughter. "Here comes Wobbling Wobble!" And then they stared in surprise. For Wobble flipped his tail smartly at them and sailed on by, comfortable as on his own cushion at home. When the boys and girls came out of their houses, dressed as clowns and cowboys and witches and ghosts, they looked up at the sky. "Oh! Oh!" cried a little girl in a Red Riding Hood cape. "I think I saw a witch up there. But what's she riding on?" The other children looked up, and sure enough, flying across the moon was a little speck. It looked like a witch and a cat doing loop-the-loops on a vacuum cleaner.
In tree of glass, with her cup of magic dwale, now she lies, so ends each tale, in sleep of death, no spell can break. Magician's hat. Like a steeple to the skies soared the occult headdress, once worn with pride by adept wise. Round the brim the zodiac whirled in scarlet thread. Alack, now this cap denotes the dunce.
Georgie, by Robert Bright. In a little village in New England, there was a little house which belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Whittaker. Up in the little attic of this little house, there lived a little ghost. His name was Georgie. Every night at the same time, he gave the loose board on the stairs a little creak, and the parlor door a little squeak, and then Mr. and Mrs. Whittaker knew it was time to go to bed. And Herman the cat, he knew it was time to prowl. And as for Miss Oliver, the owl, she knew it was time to wake up and say, "Ooh." And so it went, with everything as it should be, until Mr. Whittaker took it into his head to hammer a nail into the loose board on the stairs, and to oil the hinges of the parlor door. And so the stairs wouldn't creak anymore, and the door wouldn't squeak anymore. And Mr. and Mrs. Whittaker didn't know when it was time to go to bed anymore. And Herman, he didn't know when it was time to begin to prowl anymore. And as for Miss Oliver, She didn't know when to wake up anymore and went on sleeping. And Georgie sat up in the attic and moped. That was a fine how do you do. Pretty soon, though, Georgie decided to find some other house to haunt. But while he ran to this house and then to that house, each house already had a ghost. The only house in the whole village which didn't have a ghost was Mr. Gloam's place. But that was so awfully gloomy. The big door groaned so, and the big stairway moaned so. And besides, Mr. Gloams himself was such a crotchety old man, he came near frightening Georgie half to death. So Georgie ran away to a cow barn where there lived a harmless cow. But the cow paid no attention to Georgie. She just chewed her cud all the time, and it wasn't much fun. Meanwhile, a lot of time went by, and it rained a good deal, and during the winter, it snowed to beat the band. And out of the cow barn, Georgie was terribly cold and uncomfortable. But what with the dampness from the rain and the coldness from the snow, something happened to that board on the Whittaker stairs and to the hinges on the Whittaker parlor door. It was Herman who discovered it and told Miss Oliver, and she woke up with a start. Miss Oliver flew right over to the cow barn to tell Georgie that the board on the stairs was loose again and that the hinges on the parlor door were rusty again. What glad tidings that was for Georgie. He ran right home lickety-split. And so, at the same old time, the stairs creaked again, and the parlor door squeaked again, and Mr. and Mrs. Whittaker knew when it was time to go to sleep again. And Herman, he knew when to begin to prowl again. And as for Miss Oliver, she knew when it was time to wake up again and say, "Whoo." Thank goodness.
And the air blew cold. The people said, now the year's too old. The new year soon will succeed it. And they shook their heads with awe and fear, for they thought that Judgment Day was near, when those would arise who had died that year, and a final punishment meted. Halloween, Halloween, when the wildest, weirdest sights are seen.
October 31st must have put a curse upon me. On me. Fell in love with you, then away you flew without me. Left me. Had a bag of
over the spot.
What?
Yes, ma'am, over the spot. The apples grew ripe and ready to fall. Yes, ma'am, ready to fall. There came an old lady a-wearing a shawl, which she laid on the grave while she gathered them all.
What?
Yes, sir, gathered them all. Then Grumbler rose up from under the stone. Yes, ma'am, from under the stone. And he said in a voice twixt a...
Where the old stones lie, and their hats were peaked, and they twittered and squeaked as they danced in the green moonlight. And out of the boughs of the twisted thorn came the wail of a violin.
Katy did, Katy did, Katy did, Katy did, Katy did, oh Katy did, hanging on a tree. Where have you gone to? Where can you be? Empty your eyes and empty your shell. Where
lighted up all. Some few were skeptical and would only smile, but the path to the barn that night seemed like a mile. Reverend Wolsey preached of sin, and most folks agreed that it was a warning they had better heed. They named it the Jabberwock, for want of another. But some shook their heads, it's the devil's own brother. Then people came to church who'd never been yet. Some patched up a
He yellowed, he bellowed for help, but in vain. So swiftly did he slowly glide to the bottom of the ocean tide. But previously to this he cried, "Fare thee well, Mary Jane." And he sang, Twinkie-doodle-lum, twinkie-doodle-lum, 'twas a highly interesting song he sung. Twinkie-doodle-lum, sang the bull-fisherman. His ghost walked at midnight to the side of
the glass. Something eerie and fey and pale is peering in from the haunted night at our small room, snug from the angry gale, where faces glow in the firelight. Slant strange eyes under sea-green hair look
sad, singing Twinkie-doodle-lum, twinkie-doodle-lum, 'twas a highly interesting song he sung. Twinkie-doodle-lum, twinkie-doodle-lum, sang the bull-fisherman.
One of the oldest ballads in the English language tells how the devil stopped some weavers and tested them with 9 riddles before he'd let them go.
Oh, what is whiter than the milk? Sing 99 and 90. And what is softer than the silk? Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling Clementine, you are lost and gone forever, dreadful sorry Clementine. Drove she ducklings to the water every morning just at 9, stubbed her foot upon a pebble, fell into the foaming brine. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling Clementine, you are lost and gone forever, dreadful sorry Clementine.
with the snows of the lolling lily, by the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever, by the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp, by the dismal tarns and pools, where dwell the ghouls. By each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, there the traveller meets aghast, sheeted memories of the past.
They came in Saturday Zoon, all along, down along, out along Lee. But Tam's old grey mare, she ne'er did come home, with Bill Brewer, Jan Stewart, Peter Gantry, Peter Gurney, Daniel Whitten, Ariok, old Uncle Tom Cobley and all, old Uncle Tom Cobley and all. So Tam he made way to the top of the hill, all along, down along, out along Lee, and he saw his grey mare.
On the sand, as far as I could see, the rolling mist came down and hid the land, and never home came she. Oh, is it weed or fish or floating hair, a tress of golden hair, a drowned maiden's hair above the nets?
The sow took the measles and she died in the spring. And what do you think I made of her tail? The very best whip that ever set sail. Whipper, whiffletree, or any such thing. The sow took the measles and she died in the spring. Oh, what do you think I made of her ear? The best silk. Ran a peanut stand in Herald Square for the folks in the trolley car. But when her mother met Captain Orion and he asked for Mary's hand, she replied, if my daughter keeps company with you, I will bust up the peanut stand. She replied, if my daughter keeps company with you, I will bust up the peanut stand. Well, Mary McGee, she took it hard. She swore she'd rather be dead. And one night cried up an ocean of tears and drowned right there in her bed.
No wonder he is rude, said Mr. Carter. If you say he tells lies and then insist on changing the subject, he tells you his fantasy, you implant a guilt feeling. What can you expect? A defense mechanism. Then you get a real lie. Like in These Three, said Betty, only different, of course. She was an unblushing little liar. I would have made her blush, said Mr. Carter, in the proper part of her anatomy.
On many doors, behind each door another face, and now we've come to yours. Trick or treat, trick or treat, we're children who live just down the street. Give us something to spend or something to eat. Let us repeat. Trick or treat, the day is turning into night.
the desperation samba con los amigos. Yo quiero a bailar en Mexico. We do the desperation samba con los amigos. I hear the people singing that same old haunting tune.
Into the house because ghosts will come in with it. If ever you come upon an old hat or a piece of clothing lying on the ground with a stick across it, don't pick it up. The stick is a sign that it belongs to a ghost. Don't touch it. Don't yawn without covering your mouth with your hand. Ghosts are attracted by yawning.
Georgie's Halloween by Robert Bright. Wherever there are children, there is Halloween, with pumpkins and funny faces, with tricks and with treats. But in the little village where Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker lived, there was always something extra besides, and that was Georgie, the little ghost who lived in the Whitaker attic. Every Halloween, while the children went trick-or-treating, blowing horns, banging dishpans, making all the loud noises, Georgie went a-haunting with his friends, Herman the cat and Miss Oliver the owl. But while the children rang doorbells and shouted boldly for treats, Georgie stayed hidden. And maybe you saw him, just maybe, and maybe you didn't. And that was just as it should be, because Georgie was a gentle little ghost, and he was shy. Now, everything would have gone on just as usual year after year, except that one Halloween was different. That was the time they had a notion to give a big party for all the children on the village green, and Mr. Whitaker himself was chosen to present the prize for the best Halloween costume. That Halloween, everybody dressed up special. Herman did, Miss Oliver did, Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker did, and rode to the green in style. Everybody dressed up special except Georgie, because Georgie didn't have to. He was so especially perfect for Halloween just as he was. It just didn't seem proper that Georgie shouldn't go to the party and win the prize. All the mice in the attic thought he should. Herman thought so, Miss Oliver did, and they called to Georgie. The pumpkin in the parlor window grinned at Georgie. The Halloween moon in the sky smiled at him. But while Georgie went to the party on the green and saw the apple bobbing and pinning the tail on the donkey, he stayed hidden. And maybe you saw him, just maybe, and maybe you didn't. And when it was time for the prize contest to begin, and the children crowded around the bandstand, Georgie wasn't anywhere near enough. Just the same, he was curious, and it did seem like such fun. Besides, Herman and Miss Oliver urged him on, and so presently he did come nearer, and a little nearer, until he was right behind a corn shock that decorated the bandstand, where he had the best kind of view. That seemed plenty good enough for Georgie, except that Herman kept meowing at him so, and Miss Oliver kept hoo-hooing at him so, urging him to be brave. And so Georgie screwed up every bit of courage he had. Now, Mr. Whitaker did not see him even then. He was so busy looking the wrong way. But the children saw him and recognized their favorite little ghost. And so they shouted all together, "It's Georgie! It's Georgie!" If only they had not shouted quite so loud. Or if only Mr. Whitaker had looked around a little quicker, because he could have sworn that somebody had tugged at his coat-tail, but Georgie was gone in a second. Georgie was running home lickety-split to tell the mice in the attic about it, and all the way he could still hear the children cheering him. Now, the mice understood why Georgie ran lickety-split back to the attic, because they were so shy themselves. They had a special surprise for Georgie. And maybe it was the best kind of prize for Halloween, because it had come right out of a very old, creaky and squeaky bureau drawer. At that, Georgie was so happy and pleased, he might well have forgotten everything else. But even tonight, as soon as Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker were home again, Georgie did not forget to creak the stairs, just as usual. or to squeak the parlor door just as usual. And Herman did not forget to prowl after his favorite mouse, and Miss Oliver did not forget to sing her owl song, just as she always did in her favorite tree. As for Mr. and Mrs. Whittaker, they were still so puzzled and betwizzled by what had happened on the green that while they went to bed as they should, they forgot to blow out the pumpkin in the parlor window. But Georgie took care of that. Thank goodness.
Own sounds of Halloween, terrifying and terrible.
Eagle, and he fetched her to his lair. No use, no use, no use, she cried. This I swear is true. I wouldn't marry a husty, dusty, musty, rusty, crusty smith like you. Then she became a rabbit, and she coursed across the plain. And he became a hunting hound, and he fetched her back again. No use, no use, no use, she cried. This I swear is true. I wouldn't marry a husty, dusty, musty, rusty, crusty.
Army bombing plane B-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Bolt, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. This is Bolt reporting to Commander Fairfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine partially crippled. Believed hit by shell from Army gun in Watchung Mountain. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the earth of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River into the Jersey marshes. Another straddles the Pulaski Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. Machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards and we'll be over the first. $800 yards. $600. $400. $200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. now the engine's gone. 8. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please. This is Langham Field. Go ahead. 8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas mask useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use routes 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Raymond Boulevard.
2X2L calling CQ, 2X2L calling CQ, 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception? K, please. Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building. I'm speaking from the roof of Broadcasting Building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. The void bridges to Long Island hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here to the end. People are holding service here below us in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor, all manner of boats, overloaded with fleeing population pulling out from docks. Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowds like New Year's Eve in city. Wait a minute, the enemy's now in sight above the Palisades. Five great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here, wading the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. A bulletin is handed me. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside of Buffalo, one in Chicago, St. Louis. Seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. Steel cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out, black smoke drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running toward the East River, thousands of them, dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue. 5th Avenue. 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ, New York. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? 2X2L.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present. Furtive existence for the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with a professor who lives at Princeton and who, on the night of October 20th, glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself I shall preserve human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to write, I must live, and to live, I must eat. Find moldy bread in the kitchen and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. Keep watch at the window. Time to time, I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there's a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. Morning. Morning. Sun streams from the window. The black cloud of gas is lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm had passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road, no traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. Push on north. For some reason I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I've seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of trees, I'm ready to fling myself flat on the earth. Come to a chestnut tree. October. Chestnuts are ripe. Fill my pockets and keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion. The joy of finding another living being. Push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond the charred ruins of a dairy and a silo, remain standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse, deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. North. Next day, I come to a city. City vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off as if a giant had sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of its hand. Reached the outskirts. I found Newark. Newark, undemolished but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it. It rose up and became a man. A man armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago, from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill.
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
Hey, what was that? Did we hear something just then?
No. Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl in this doorway here and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
No. They're going over to New York. Night, the skies are alive with their lights, just as if people were still living. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia. National Guard. That's good. There wasn't any war. Any more than there's war between man and ants.
Yes, but we're eatable ants. I found that out. What'll they do to us?
I thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. A Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic, like keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet, bothering them with guns and such stuff and losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. No, instead of our rushing around blind, we got to fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress.
Yes, but if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
What is there left?
Life, that's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either. Tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their feet. I got a plan. We men as men, we're finished. We don't know enough. We got to learn plenty before we get a chance. And we've got to live and keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see?
Well, tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. That's what it got to be. That's what it's got to be. That's why what's you? Oh, those little office workers that used to live in these houses, they be no good. They haven't any stuff in them. Afraid that you can if they didn't. Running back at night. Afraid they wouldn't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accident. Yeah, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. Well, the Martians, they'll be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. Yeah, after a week or so of chasing around the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Sure, you bet I have. That isn't all. These Martians are going to make pets of them. Train them to do tricks. Who knows, get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. Yeah, and some maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
Oh, no, it's impossible. Human.
Yes, they will.
There's men who do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, by...
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when the Martians own the Earth?
I got it all figured out. To live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York, there are miles and miles of them. The main ones, they're big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You're beginning to see, huh? We'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weaklings. That rubbish, out.
As you meant me to go.
All right. Give you a chance, didn't I?
Won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Well, we gotta make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. May not be so much we have to learn before... Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left. Not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, see? But men. Men who've learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee. Imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians. We'd turn it on men. We'd bring everybody down on their knees.
That's your plan.
You. Me. A few more. We'd own the world.
I see.
Hey. Hey, what's the matter? Where you going?
Not to your world. Bye, stranger. Well, after parting with the artilleryman, I came at last to the Holland Tunnel. I entered that silent tube. Anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. Reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s, stood alone on Times Square, caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. Made a wide circle around me as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. Walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, that silent shop windows, displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks. Past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark. Past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in the showrooms facing empty streets. Over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. Hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 60th Street, and from there I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal Titans, their cowls empty, their steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground. And there before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain, after all, man's defenses had failed by the humblest thing that God, His wisdom, has put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. dim and wonderful is the vision I've conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastnesses of sidereal space. But a remote dream, maybe. Maybe that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve to them and not to us. The future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this last chapter of the record, begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to see from my window the university spires dim and blue through an April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the green where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a brood. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the dissembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it. Bright and clean-cut, hard and silent under the dawn of that last great day. This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and seal all your garden gates. By tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween.
Scat the Witch's Cat by Geraldine Ross. In the crags of Crazy Mountain, near the boiling fire fountain, lived a witch named Mrs. Stitch. She owned a pot in which to stew quite a lot of witch's brew, a pointed hat, a battered broom, and pets enough to fill a room. A snake named Jake, an owl named Scowl, a bat named Brat, a crow named Joe, and best of all, a black and small, thinly flat cat named Scat. Jake and Brat loved the cave. They were brave. Scowl and Joe loved it too. They were new. But Scat would leave if he dared. He was scared. He hated all the wicked witches, all their dens and all their ditches. He wished his fur were smooth as silk. He wanted saucers filled with milk. As witches go, his witch was rich. But poor Scat hated Mrs. Stitch. Night after night, day after day, he plotted how to get away. The old witch muttered as she stirred. The poor cat shuddered at each word. When Mrs. Stitch would dance and leap, Scat shivered even in his sleep. He dreamed of fish and mice and toys. He dreamed of gentle girls and boys. He dreamed of naps and soft, deep laps and petted fur and a purr. He wakened when the old witch cackled and the fire hissed and crackled. Then all his lovely dreams would melt, and oh, how scared and sad he felt. On Halloween, a witch is queen. On Halloween, all witches zoom through the gloom on a broom. Mrs. Stitch took Brat the Bat and poor frightened little Scat on her broom, and wild and high they flew like wind across the sky. Forth and back and forth, west and east, south and north, Scat could hear the old witch fret, faster, faster, faster yet. The bat was glad, the witch went mad, but poor Scat huddled, scared and sad, and in the middle of a yell he lost his hold, and down he fell. Through the night, dark and dim, with the screams after him, down, down to the town, followed by her ugly frown. With his eyes wide and green, Scat plunged into Halloween, where the alleys and the streets milled and spilled with tricks and treats. Like a black wind-tattered rag, he fell into an open bag. In the middle of the bars, the nuts, the chocolate cigars, the apples and the lollipops, the popcorn and the lemon drops, among the cookies, sweet and fat, there was Scat, the witch's cat. His delight was quite complete when a blue-eyed boy named Pete yelled, "I got a special treat." Scat is happy. Scat is good, behaving as a good cat should. Only, when the witches ride, he will never stir outside, and his eyes, bright and green, close up tight on Halloween.
The spare room, or I spend the night in a bathtub. But the master of Harrowby would have lost his wager had there been anyone there to take him up, for when Christmas Eve came again he was in his grave, never having recovered from the cold contracted that awful night. Harrowby Hall was closed, and the heir to the estate was in London, where to him an experience that his father had gone through, saving only that being younger and stronger, he survived the shock.
Cheese of cream cheese, his hat was made of cream cheese, and his name was Aiken Drum, and he played upon a ladle, a ladle, a ladle, played upon a ladle, and his name was Aiken Drum, and his coat was made of roast beef, of roast beef, of roast beef, his coat was made of roast beef, and his name was Aiken Drum, and he played upon a ladle, a ladle, a ladle, played upon a ladle, and his name was Aiken Drum. and his boots were made of candy canes, of candy canes, of candy canes.
Salt and water, and across the waves the sound of laughter. October, it has gone and left me with a song that I will sing to you. Oh,
What are you going to be on Halloween, on Halloween? What are you going to be on Halloween, on Halloween? He's going to be a clown on Halloween, on Halloween. He's going to be a clown on Halloween, on Halloween. What are you going to be on Halloween, on Halloween?
Halloween is a wonderful time, and I can't help but remember what a terrific party we had at my house last year. Everybody came to the party. Cary Grant drove up. Bing Crosby drove in. And the musicians brought their girls. What girls? They all looked like test pilots from a broom factory. None of them had any teeth, but the trombone player's girl was prettier than the rest. She had lips.
Pumpkin Moonshine by Tasha Tudor. Sylvie Ann was visiting her grandmummy in Connecticut. It was Halloween, and Sylvie wanted to make a pumpkin moonshine. So she put on her bonnet and started out for the cornfield to find the very finest and largest pumpkin. The cornfield was on top of the hill, quite away from the house, so Sylvie took Wiggy for company. The hill was very steep. It made Sylvie and Wiggy puff like steam engines. When they reached the field, Sylvie looked among the shocks of corn for the very fattest pumpkin. Way across the field she found such a fine one. It was so very big Sylvie couldn't lift it. So instead, she rolled it across the field, just the way you rolled big snowballs in wintertime. But when Sylvie and Wiggy and the pumpkin came to the edge of the field, where the ground sloped down into the barnyard below, the pumpkin began running away. It leapt over stones and bushes, bumpity, bump, bump. Faster, faster down the hill, with Sylvie and Wiggy rushing after it. It frightened the goats. It terrified the hens. It enraged the geese as it tore into the barnyard at a truly dreadful speed. But worst of all, it bumped right into Mr. Hemmelskamp, who was carrying a pail full of whitewash. It didn't stop till it hit the side of the house. Kerthumpity, bumpity, thump. Sylvie Ann was a very polite little girl, so of course she helped Mr. Hemmelskamp to his feet before going after the pumpkin. She apologized to the goats and poultry, too. Then Sylvie went to her grandpop and told him what happened, so he came out and cut the top off that runaway pumpkin. Sylvie scooped all the seeds and pulp out. Then grandpop made eyes and a nose and a big grinning mouth with horrid, crooked teeth. It was evening by then, so they put a lighted candle inside the pumpkin to make him look as fierce and horrid as all true pumpkin moonshines should. Sylvie and grandpop put the pumpkin moonshine on the front gate post. Then they hid in the bushes to watch how terrified the passers-by would be at the sight of this fierce pumpkin moonshine. They had a...
The heir of Harrowby had won at last, and today in a large storage house in London stands the frigid form of one who will never again flood the house of Oglethorpe with woe and seawater. As for the heir...
He turned their wedding rings into tin. It's a quick divorce, says Tam-o'-lin. Tam-o'-lin, 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 I-oh. He hid the pieces of the little girl's game. He saw that her brother got all the blame. Trouble came down wherever he'd been. I'm a great little joker, says Tam-o'-lin. Tam-o'-lin, 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 I-oh. One Halloween I was trimming up the light when I heard a sound in the stormy night. A voice from the darkness shouted, "Hail!" And there was my mother a-waving her tail. Jolly stories, jolly told, when the waves roll high and the wind blows cold. What has become of my children too? My mother asked, as mothers do. Well, one